what do you think the biggest mistakes are that people make when it comes to losing body fat?
Well, I'm glad you said losing body fat. So you already like fixed the biggest mistake is people trying to lose weight,
Yes.
right? I mean, that's the big one. And it just blows my mind. I had to go to the doctor recently and I go in and they put me on a scale and I go, how is it you know, in 2023 that I am still standing on a scale and you are going to use this for what information? Like what information did you just get there? Nothing. Right? And so the very first thing, big mistake we're making, I mean, you wouldn't go on our computer, say, I want to fly to New York this weekend and not have a starting point. You wouldn't do it. But yet that's what we do here is we go, okay, I want to lose body fat. Then I'm going to look at my weight. Well, how do you know if you lost body fat? If you're looking at your weight. What if you did a big caloric restriction with very low protein and didn't, sat on the couch? You could lose a lot of weight. You could become worse, not better, because you didn't lose body fat, you lost lean tissue. So I'd say the thing that we're really doing is we're looking at the wrong metrics, and women especially. And I got to tell you, I've been talking a lot about creatine lately, and women have been like, oh, but I'm going to gain weight with that. I go, if you are lucky enough to gain weight with creatine, it means that you have more water in your muscles. This is what we want. If you are one of the few women, because it rarely happens, that actually manages to do that, this is what we want to celebrate. But we are so used to trying to weigh less, be thinner. I had a gal come to me when I owned my gym in Palm Desert, and she wanted to lose 10 pounds. And I looked at her and, her body weight was completely normal for her weight. She looked fine. She looked fine in clothes. But once you saw her in a swimsuit, she was just, skinny fat. And when I did her body fat, she was like 25, 26%. And by the way, I'll tell you, back when I was in doctoral school, the norms they gave us for body fat back in the 80s are totally different than what they say the norms are now, because now, you're healthy at any size, which I call BS on. So our norms back then for a woman was 18 to 22%, 25% at the highest. Athletic women were in the 15 to 22% range. So this one was 25, 26%. We worked together a year. She goes to 19% body fat. She dropped 10 pounds of fat. She puts on 10 pounds of muscle, and she drops 2 clothing sizes. She looks amazing, and she is disappointed because she didn't lose any weight.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, that people get upset when they don't lose weight, but they've lost body fat and gain muscle, because we've put so much emphasis on the scale, like you've said, and we really haven't we've come out with all these great tools, right? In the biohacking space, there's so many things where you could essentially track like every metric of your health that you wanted to, for the most part, but we haven't come up with anything, more modern that's accurate, that test body fat percentage that people can do from the comfort of their home. I mean, unless I know there's DEXA scans, you can do stuff like that.
Yeah, I have a DEXA scan at home. I do it every day. No, okay. So yeah, it is a big challenge. Like, and then now they're saying, well, the DEXA is not really accurate. Get an MRI. I'm like, you know what? Sometimes you have to say good is good enough. So what I did was, I have people do a DEXA, then go home, use a bioimpedance machine, know they're not going to be accurate like the DEXA. However, we're going to look at the trends. I know that a DEXA reads me, the bioimpedance machine I have at home reads me 9% higher than the DEXA. And so I know that. I'm just watching the trend. I'm making sure that I am not dropping skeletal muscle. I'm not, all of a sudden my total body water isn't dropping, right? So you watch the trend. And that's what you can use a bioimpedance machine for, not for the absolute, but for the relative changes to make sure they're going in the right direction. And you're getting great information there. And then every 6 months, go do a DEXA.
And so you talked about this person that gained muscle, lost body fat, and I think that is the goal, I would think, for many people. I mean, unless they're heavily obese and they just need to lose weight just for the sake of like their immediate health, right? And so with that said, we know that one of the biggest mistakes that you've identified is not thinking of it as losing weight. It's more losing body fat and making sure that your body fat percentage goes down in a healthy range. What are some of the things that you would have somebody do if they're looking to minimize muscle loss while also losing body fat.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I worked with an amazing endocrinologist about 20 years ago. It was all the way up to doctoral level classes in exercise physiology. We didn't even have any classes in endocrinology. Like I bought the first exercise endocrinology textbook later on, but working with her, she really helped me understand. And one of the phrases she said, understanding hormonal effects with exercise, with eating, with all of that, was you don't lose weight to get healthy. You have to get healthy to lose weight. And so if you think about that, what are we really trying to do? We're really trying to make sure that our body is metabolically healthy. It can build muscle, it can lose fat. You have to be metabolically healthy to lose fat. And so when I look at this, the first thing I always feel like, what's the thing that we can attack first? Well, we all eat, right? So and I like just kind of trading some behavior. So I have a mantra, and that mantra is eat protein first. The reason being is if you eat protein first, and I've been doing this little challenge with my community, it's a 7-day challenge. All they have to do is figure out how much protein they should have. I have them dose between 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of target body weight. Then I have them get it in minimum 100 grams a day, minimum 30 grams at a meal, 40, 50 better, and especially your bumper meals. And what I've seen by just doing that their cravings go away. You know that when you eat protein, you're way more satiated. We've got a higher thermic effect of food, like 20 to 30% of those calories just from the protein are going to be used in the digestion assimilation. It's going to help you with getting the essential amino acids so that you can go through muscle protein synthesis. So just that one thing can be this little hinge that swings a big door. So that's the place I always like to start, because what I found in the last 40 years is people need a quick win, right? They need some kind of quick win that helps them start to feel better. But again, I won't do any of this unless someone is willing to do two things. They have to be willing to understand their body composition and track those changes, because again, they may not see. My husband, we went and did DEXAs last year because I decided for my 60th birthday, I wanted to get into the best shape of my life. I did my DEXA at 59. It was exactly the same as my DEXA at 39. It was 154 pounds, 13.9% body fat. My husband, who looks great in clothes, was 25% body fat. And so he dropped in 6 months, he dropped 20 pounds of fat, put on 19 pounds of muscle. What would have happened if we weren't using a body composition scale and going back and looking at the DEXA again, right? So you have to do that. And the other thing, when you're doing that eating protein first, you have to actually weigh your protein and track it. This no like deck of cards, hand, like no, you actually have to track it and know how much you're really getting. Because while people tend to underestimate what they eat, anywhere 20 to 40, 25 to 40%, they are nowhere near what they need in their protein. They're overeating on fat and carbs. And that was my husband. He was like Siete chips here and some hummus and nuts and, piling on all that and not getting enough protein in.
Yeah, healthy food's still calories, right? And I think with that said, I've often made that mistake too. Like when, I'm trying to reach some sort of fitness goal or health goal, if I'm trying to drop some body fat or get leaner or whatever, that I don't track my food, because I'm like, all right, well, I know what I'm eating. I've been doing this long enough. I'm eating healthy food. I mean, it must be, I must be doing it the right way. And then I find that, I'm actually eating a little bit more than I need to, and I need to adjust accordingly. You deal with a lot of busy people. I know you're busy yourself. And while that's not necessarily an excuse, it's just the fact of the matter is, I mean, people are just busy. And I think sometimes they have a hard time tracking things. What's been a system that's worked well for you throughout the course of your life, or something that's worked well for this group that you lead or people that you coach that helps them effectively and efficiently track what they're eating?
All of this stuff comes down to a decision, right? Because I had a great nutrition mentor early on who said, if you don't have time, make time. To me, if you say you don't have time to track, like really, I use the Chronometer app. It saves your stuff. You can save your favorite meals, you can save your things and just move them over. So, it's like they say they don't have time, but yet you look at the places people are spending time. So I think that really is much more about deciding you're going to just do this and make the commitment. And I think, you don't have to track for the rest of your life. I say do it for a month, get really clear. And then if things start to slide, I believe that we need to weigh in every single day and do if things are, staying the same on your scale, then you're fine. But if not, do a tape measure around your waist every week to help with the visceral adipose tissue markers. But you have to do those things. They're just part of what you do every single day. And if your weight starts to shift, go back to tracking again, right? Because it's just like, drinking wine. You drink a glass of wine at home, and all of a sudden your wine glass gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you go to a restaurant and you go, that's what a 4-ounce glass of wine looks like. What was I pouring in my glass? It's the same thing. We just, like, the portions in the United States are just insane. So it really helps you learn and connect the dots because, as you said, too much healthy food's unhealthy.
Outside of protein, what are some of your favorite foods to eat? Like if you were looking to drop some body fat, or if you had a client that wanted to lose some fat around the waistline, like what other types of foods would you say you would make sure that are incorporated into some sort of plan to ensure that they're not only going to stay within their caloric range, but it's actually going to help them reach their goals?
So I always start protein first. And I say eat protein first and build your plate around protein. Next thing I add in are non-starchy vegetables. I am not afraid of vegetables. I do not believe they are the foe. I know there is so much stuff. I'm like, it is amazing having been in this field for 40 years, seeing the different things that have been vilified. Right? I mean, and now we've got evil plants. I'm like, okay, come on. So I think plants are good. Certain ones need to be cooked, right? But, greens and deep leafy greens and rainbow of vegetables, that's my next thing. All the non-starchies, at least 5 servings a day, a half a cup cooked, cup raw. More is better. So we regularly get like 10 servings of non-starchy vegetables a day. We're big on mushrooms and onions that we put on our grass-fed. We finally found a company that we could get grass-fed bone-in New Yorks. Like we have to ship them in, but yay. And we'll do like tons of mushrooms and onions and then broccoli on the side, add a little ghee. So I do that. I do 2 servings of fruit a day, generally berries. And that's what I might have someone go up to 3, but I basically keep fruit around 2 servings. Then I look at how much fat are you getting in? Because if you're eating animal sources, you're going to get in some fat, which is why it's important to get clean animals because you are what you eat. So super important to buy quality protein and not eat garbage. And it's one of my big arguments when you see people talking plant-based is they're comparing like their diet to eating junk food, stuff like all the factory cows. You can't compare that to grass-fed, grass-finished, right? So that's the next step is count in the fat that you might have used on those vegetables, count in the fat in there. And then beyond that, I think you should start with about 100 grams of carbs a day, start with about 60 grams of fat a day, and then see how you feel. Some people do better, like I think beyond 100, you earn your carbs with exercise, but some people do better pushing their carbs up more. Some people do better pushing their fat up more. What you don't want to do is push up your carbs and fat and drop your protein because that's the obesogenic formula, right?
What are your thoughts on adherence? I mean, I've heard, I've had like Lane Norton on and he's talked about that. I mean, people can follow like high carb or low carb and it depends based on like what they're going to actually follow. Like, what role do you think adherence plays in all this?
Adherence is everything. Like if you try to design a diet someone's not going to eat, what's the point? It won't work, or if you design a diet that puts their trigger foods in and they overeat, well, then you've got a problem too. So you've got to design something that is going to work for them and work for their lifestyle, but still follow those basic principles. So, adherence is everything. And again, like you look at all of the different studies and, high carb and high fat with protein constant and calories constant play out the same. So I look at them, I think diets are tools. And I'd lower carbs if I had someone more insulin resistant. I was trying to fix that. I'd lower fat if I have someone who's wanting to really push, has got more adrenal problems or is really trying to push through more cardio, and I haven't managed to convince them otherwise because That would be the next thing I do is drop that, right? So I think there's places to play around with this, but I'm much more of a balanced approach to all of that.
When it comes to, losing body fat and specifically like belly fat, like fat around the waist, I feel like people, their first inclination is I'm just going to go do planks and crunches. I'm going to do stuff with the medicine ball, which, listen, I think core work is important. However, I know you're very big on resistance training and that in itself can play a massive role in losing body fat. We talked about this at the beginning, that it's important to gain muscle to be able to lose, body fat. What is your, I guess, why do you believe resistance training is so important? And then like, how do you see people incorporating it if they're looking to, stay on this theme of losing body fat?
It's so crazy. And it was probably more because we were funded by Precor. When I was in graduate school, my graduate school degree was all focused on biomechanics. And so my work was in spinal lifting biomechanics. So I was the black sheep in the department. Everything was cardio focused. We had all these Precor machines, and we had people come in and do 30-minute aerobic sessions, and that's what everybody was doing their thesis on. And I did mine on strength. Because early on, like I was actually paying my way through graduate and doctoral school by personal training. And what I saw quickly was that I wasn't getting results by just having people do loads of cardio, despite what we were being taught in school was that you should not have people lift weights till they lose weight. But I was going down to Gold's Gym in Venice, California, and the body, first of all, they had this one little area back then. It was a huge room and one little area in a loft where they had 5 Schwinn aerodynes. That was the extent of cardio. All of these people who were the most ripped, lean people ever, and women in their 60s and 70s that you would die to look like, weren't doing cardio. They were lifting weights, and then they were going and having chicken, brown rice, and broccoli, right? Like the diet of the bodybuilder. And so if you look at that, you go, okay, the idea out there is if you want to lose body fat, you should do loads of cardio. The reality, especially for that belly fat, and when I think of belly fat, I'm not talking about the inches you pinch. That's the subcutaneous fat. I'm talking about the deep fat, the visceral adipose tissue. When you look at that fat, you do a lot of cardio, you're going to make that worse, not better. You stress your body more, you're going to create more visceral adipose tissue, not less. If you start to look at it, and what I realized way back then, and I didn't have the science behind it yet to understand why, I just knew that this worked and that didn't, was that when I started to do resistance training, and the way I thought about it in my brain was, I'm basically, if they're doing cardio, it's like they're spending the money they have. If they're doing resistance training, it's like they've invested it and they can spend the interest. So I'm going to have them do the resistance training, which is going to hold everything in tighter. I could clearly see it, and improve their metabolism. I mean, not dramatically, but muscle obviously has a better metabolic effect than fat, plus it improves insulin sensitivity. So that was always the focus. Then I started to get really interested, and this was when I was on Dr. Phil. I was really interested in why some people struggled with losing weight, despite the fact that it seemed like they were eating healthy and exercising. Now, I couldn't put them in a lab and really make sure they were eating healthy and exercising, because the first thing you'd go is, were they really? But I wanted to look at anything that couldn't get in the way of you losing weight or cause you to gain weight or really shift your body composition. And what was clear as I started to dig into that was the role of stress, the role of sleep, the role of things like alcohol, because it's going to be metabolized first and cause, I mean, there's a reason they call it a beer belly. Like, what are those things that can cause problems? So when I think of visceral adipose tissue, I think you got to handle stress, you got to handle sleep. One poor night of sleep, you're more insulin resistant. You're stressed out, you're going to break down muscle. You've got all those cortisol receptors in your belly. You're going to lay down fat. You're going to crave sugar. You're going to get more possibility of leaky gut. You have more food intolerance. You get more inflamed. And you've got to move off of the cardio and into the resistance training and shift the cardio into high intensity interval training. And when you look at it, like as we age, we're not losing the endurance muscles. We're not losing our slow twitch muscles. We're losing the HIIT training muscles, the resistance training muscles, the fast twitchers. That's where we really need to focus.